This is Trevor Benko, CEO of TGB Supplements.
And this is Ben Jordan, COO of TGB Supplements.
And today we're going to do a video talking about 1-testosterone.
Or dihydroboldenone.
Yeah, 1-testosterone is it's kind of a unique steroid. It's kind of new to the black market, but it was also actually sold as a supplement back in 2002, around that time anyway. It was being sold orally, transdermally, and it's now available on the black market just from very few sources. But it's a very interesting steroid, and we're going to go into a little bit of detail about it today. It's actually one of our favorite steroids personally, and I think a lot of you guys will probably like it as well if you get a chance to give it a try. So we'll get into that now. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, I'll give my personal experience with the one test. I believe I ran it at, I want to say 300 or 450 milligrams for 10 or 12 weeks. Works very well for nitrogen retention quality, so you give your muscles like a nice pop, fulfilling, kind of like what a primobolan does. Really good for lean, hardening effect, real good with vascularity. Keep your strength up very high. They call it a poor man's trend, which it does have some similarities in that aspect. You do get a little hot off of it, I did notice that. But it seems to be pretty low with the androgenic side effect of it for it being a DHT-based compound. Like, you don't get no like aggressive edginess. No blood pressure increase up on it. It felt very clean. It's probably one of my favorite compounds that I've ever used.
Yeah, and kind of agree with Ben there. I used a very similar dosing, 300 to 350 milligrams, I would say, per week with a replacement dose of testosterone. And to me, it felt more like 500 milligrams of primobolan. I actually enjoy the one test a little bit more than primobolan. I just think that it's a little more potent per milligram in my opinion. Primobolan is a really great steroid, very low side effects, good anabolic effect. I hate that you have to inject so much, and 1-testosterone is very similar actually, that you can only get so much per milligram, or so much of it per milligram per milliliter, due to it being a heavy molecular weight. It'll fall out of solution. So most of the time it's in like a cypionate oil, and the most I've ever seen was 150 milligrams per milliliter. It's usually 100 to 150 milligrams per milliliter from what we've seen.
Yeah, I believe they've tried 200 before, but it kept falling out of solution, or they had the post-injection pain was pretty bad with it.
Yeah, it usually crashes, and like Ben said, it can have a pretty bad post-injection site pain, and we're going to talk about that as well. Overall, I mean, it's a very dry, lean steroid with very low side effects, which is why I like it. Now, the dosing that Ben and I use is very, very moderate. That's probably like I'd say a little more than what a beginner dose would be recommended if you're reading into the anabolics. Before we go any further, I just want to say this is not medical advice. We're not telling you to do this or take this steroid. It's just our opinion on the steroid, just for research purposes only. I guess getting a little bit deeper into it, 1-testosterone is also referred to as DHB, like Ben said, dihydroboldenone. So it's a cousin of equipoise, though it acts more like, I'd say like a primobolan, like a DHT-based steroid. So it is to equipoise what dihydrotestosterone is to testosterone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I believe equipoise actually has some conversion to 1-testosterone in the body, but it's minute, like 3 or 5%, something like that. I believe it's very low.
I thought it was a little higher than that, but it's not a whole lot, and that's actually the most potent form of equipoise. So it's actually a lot more anabolic than equipoise, nandrolone, testosterone. Is there one I'm missing? I think it was maybe another steroid is more anabolic. It's actually one of the most anabolic substances, I believe, that's ever been isolated from a naturally occurring steroid.
Probably more anabolic than primobolan as well.
Yeah, I believe so. It's 2 to 1. Mm-hmm. So 200 to 100, anabolic to androgenic. So that means it's twice as anabolic as it is androgenic.
Yeah. Now the ratio doesn't always equate into real world gains. That's just kind of, what is that, the beta testing?
Yeah, it's usually the effect on the prostate tissue. Actually, it's actually what they go off of. So it doesn't actually always reflect directly what kind of effect it'll have on actual muscle tissue. They're going off of the prostate. So it just kind of gives you an idea. Usually it's pretty close. For example, testosterone is 100 to 100, tren is 500 to 500. So that means this is, unlike tren, which is it's actually a similar ratio to testosterone, just 5 times as strong. This actually has 2 times the anabolic effect that it does androgenic effect.
Yeah, now something like the 1 testosterone, with it being DHT based, it's going to elicit more of a pure anabolic effect, lean tissue that you're going to see. Something like a testosterone, it has other pathways of growth with estrogen, IGF from the elevated estrogen. So you don't see as much of a lean tissue gain as you would with something like the 1 test or a primobolan.
And with 1 testosterone, having a very low androgenic effect, that means it's going to have less side effects like oily skin, acne, blood pressure, water retention. It's going to be a little drier, little bit more of a tissue builder.
Now the 1 test does have a very high binding affinity for the androgen receptor. Again, we've talked about this in previous episodes. So if you are, say, running 500 milligrams of testosterone and you've never ran anything else before, and you've got your aromatase inhibitor or Nolvadex, what have you, whatever you're using to control your estradiol, and you implement something like the 1 test or primobolan or something that has a greater binding affinity for the androgen receptor, it's going to displace more of that testosterone to be floating around through your bloodstream. So what's going to happen is you're going to have to play with your aromatase inhibitor dose a little bit more to figure out how to control that excess testosterone, because there's more testosterone that's able to be converted to estradiol now, because the 1 test is always going to hit the androgen receptor first.
It's also going to free up more testosterone, allowing it to work more effectively as well. Give you a little bit more of a background on 1 testosterone or dihydroboldenone. Like we had said, it started in 2002 when it was actually researched a while back, and there was some positive studies, but it never made it to be a prescription drug. Back in 2002 is when supplement companies actually started, going through the books and finding these old steroids, and they were bringing them back as prohormones or what were they called? Pro-steroids, they were calling them,
yep,
which is actually a designer steroid.
Right. I believe it was Nutrix and VPX that had them, the 1TU. And
yeah, which we're going to talk about here. The 1TU, like Ben said, is a 1 testosterone undecanate. It was in a oil soft gel, and the way that they would take those, it was almost like androil. It's testosterone in an undecanate ester in a fat-soluble oil capsule, and you'd want to actually try to take that up through the lymphatic system. So you usually want to take that with a high-fat meal to help with the absorption, which is a little bit different. It actually you want to try to prevent that first pass of the liver, because the liver just wipes it out. So by trying to have it uptaken through the lymphatic system, that's the whole goal of taking it orally. Now, you need to take a lot more orally,
right,
of course, compared to an injectable.
Yeah, any compound that you take orally that isn't methylated, you want to try to have some fats with it, because it's going to slow down the pass of it through your stomach into your intestines, so more of it can get absorbed, because it doesn't have that absorption enhancer.
Yeah, and now there was also a transdermal formula. Was the VPX a transdermal?
I believe it was. I had one.
Now, I'd like to get my hands on one of these.
Yeah.
I'd like to give it a try, but I have never seen it myself. I mean, I know the supplement was available, but at the time I wasn't aware. So that's something I would like to try. Now, I believe with the transdermal solutions, the uptake was about 10 to 12% of the actual dosing. So you need to dose it pretty high as well. Not quite as high as the oral, but pretty close. I want to say that, well, we'll get to the dosing here shortly, but I want to say it was like 50 to 75 milligrams is what they were recommending.
Yeah, and something like the 1 testosterone, it wouldn't be very cost effective to try to do that long term or do it at a high enough dosage to get a good muscle building effect. It'd be more of like an additive that you could implement.
Now, in 2006, I believe that's when, or 2005, 2006, the Anabolic Steroid Control Act, that's when they placed 1 testosterone on the list as a class 3 steroid or a class 3 drug, which, in my opinion, is a little bit crazy to group it with those serious types of drugs, but that's what our government did. So it is considered a class 3, and it is illegal now. So now it's really, you're only going to find it on the black market. It's definitely limited.
Yeah, it's
availability.
Probably even more, I'll call it mythical than mint would.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, ment's definitely more common now, which is crazy, because it was a rare steroid for a while.
There probably isn't anything that would be more rare than 1 test.
No, it's probably one of the rarest out there. I mean, I would say it's like a mainstream type of steroid, I guess you could say. So it's pretty rare. I've only seen it myself 3 times in my whole life, and I've used 2 different types. very similar effect. Thankfully, the type that I had used wasn't extremely painful, but then again, I wasn't using high doses, and I also try to split it up into smaller, more frequent injections, so it's not going to be as painful, and mix it in with my replacement dose of testosterone when I did use it. But you know, the results you can expect from DHB or one test would be a leaner, drier effect, very similar to the effect that you would get with primobolan, but it does seem to be a little bit more potent, more strength increases, I would say, for sure. It's great for pre-contest. I'd say anytime when you're trying to get cut or lean, so if you're on a diet.
Yeah, if you're around 10% body fat, you could probably really see the cosmetic effects of what one testosterone could do for you.
Yeah. Now another thing with one test, which is kind of unique, well, other than the heavy molecular weight, which is, you know, you don't see too often with injectables. I mean, like for example, equipoise, I've seen it dosed up 400 or 500 milligrams per milliliter, which, you know, usually they're using like a solvent like ethyl oilate to help get that high dose and prevent it from falling out. But you know, in this case, you have to really try to pick your injections wisely. You don't want to inject a large volume of this stuff because you're going to be in a lot of pain.
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to say. And depending on the manufacturer, or you know, who is actually putting it out there, the quality, how good they are, you know, of mixing it. If they put too much benzoyl alcohol or benzoyl benoate in there, you know, it could actually cause even more pain. So it's something you want to be aware of. Now, there's some things you can do to help mitigate the pain.
With oil, something heavy like the one testosterone or primobolan, if the oil is heated up, if you had it in your syringe, you could just run it under a little bit of warm water, get the oil very vacuous so it'll pass through easily, and it'll disperse into the muscle. If it's colder, it's more likely to lump up and bind up, and that's what you get the pain from. The heat, if it helps disperse it, it goes throughout the muscle and it doesn't get stuck in like one cavity.
Yeah, you know, I've used a heating pad in the past. You don't want to get it to be where it's too hot because that can be painful as well. But you want to warm it up so it's just nice and thin. You want to make it in a thinner oil. You can also freeze your tips. Now, this is with any kind of injection for testosterone replacement or what have you. If you put the tips in the freezer, it will numb the nerve a little bit when it goes to pass through the skin. So that'll also help with pain going in. You can also you can add a sterile oil. Now, this is more advanced. I definitely wouldn't recommend this for most people just because you're probably going to end up hurting yourself. If you're not using a sterile oil, you could really cause some harm. But if you had a sterile oil like a grapeseed oil, you could break it down even further. So it's, let's say, 75 milligrams per milliliter instead of 150. That would also help with the pain.
Probably the best thing to do would be like what Trevor was saying. He used it with his replacement dose of testosterone. A testosterone that's at 200 milligrams per milliliter, that's plenty low enough of a volume of a compound inside that milliliter to where it's cut a lot. Say versus like a test 400 or a test 500, that's not going to help cutting the one testosterone with it just from that large amount of compound in that milliliter.
Yeah. And now another little comparison to some of the other, you know, to other steroids, like I had said, the primobolan. I think it's like primobolan, but it doesn't hurt the appetite. You know, where primobolan, if you get a little higher dose, it can hinder your appetite a little bit. You do get good strength gains. I think a little more than the primobolan. It's a little more cost effective in most cases than high doses of primobolan. Some even have referred to it as trend's baby brother. Ben had said that it does make you a little hotter, but that's about all I noticed.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the only thing that I noticed. A better comparison would probably be a mix between a primobolan and a masteron than a trenbolone.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a more accurate mix. Or, you know, it'd be like an equipoise without the extra bloat and appetite. I think it's just more clean and dry. Is pretty much what I would say. Another thing that's unique about one testosterone is that it does aromatize into estradiol. Now, this is very surprising since it's a DHT-based steroid, which is really rare, and it's not actually understood exactly how that happens. It's believed that the body may actually add a double bond at the carbon 4, which could cause, you know, the aromatization to estradiol. Now, it's very slight and it's not going to have much of an impact for most people. If you're very sensitive, you may have an impact if you're running high doses of it. But it's just something that most people overlook and get confused. I know that the Anabolics book, it actually talks about this, and I think that's where I became aware of it. But yeah, that makes it another thing that's very unique about it. Now, typical dosing, we were talking about the oral dosing, the transdermal. Orally, it's typically 100 to 250 milligrams daily for men. Women have used this steroid at low doses, like 25 milligrams per day. I wouldn't recommend it. You still risk the side effects like virilization or masculinizing effects. So I'd say it's best to avoid it. Plus, it's hard to find an oral dose at that milligram. I mean, usually it's dosed much higher because guys need a lot more. Transdermally, you want to cover the dosing there?
Yeah, they recommend 75 to 100 milligrams transdermally daily just for a starter. That would be if you added, say, 100 or 200 milligrams of a TRT dose of testosterone. You could get a pretty decent effect off of it.
Yeah. I think a nice little hardening effect at like 100 milligrams transdermally a day would be good. Now think about that. If you're getting 10% absorption, you figure that's about 10 milligrams a day. If you do that times 7, that's about 70 milligrams a week. So that'd be like taking 70 milligrams of injectable per week. So if you take out the ester, you're probably looking at about 100 milligrams. 100 milligrams per week would be probably equal to about 100 milligrams per day transdermally, given those numbers. Now that's just, our figures on
speculation.
Yeah, no science behind that, so don't take it to the bank. But that's just our speculation.
It wouldn't be very cost effective at that point for what you get out of it.
No. I mean, if you were to use the Cypionate, the injectable version, normally I would say a starter beginner dose, very mild, would be like 150, 200 milligrams a week with a replacement dose of testosterone, similar dose. Now you would get a slight hardening, a little bit of strength increase. You should have, I would say, little to no side effects in most cases. It's very mild at those types of doses. I think that's a good place to start, just to see how you respond, see how you feel.
You can gain some decent tissue off of that dose for sure.
Most people, I mean, now, hardcore user, guys that are using, a gram of test a week and beyond, they're not going to get anything from that. They probably won't notice much of anything, and they'll be disappointed. But, if you're doing it the right way and building yourself up slowly, trying out different compounds and just working your way up, one step at a time. You want to use as little as possible to continue growing. If you can continue growing, there's no point in going any further until that stops.
Yeah, that just made me think. I read a study not too long ago, and it finally clicked with me. We have androgen receptors inside of our skeletal muscle, right? Well, the more muscle we put on, the more androgen receptors we'll have to bind an anabolic to it. Well, say we go running 2 grams of stuff off the bat, we don't have all the muscle tissue to support all those compounds. Versus if you slowly work your way up, you're slowly building more muscle tissue, so you're slowly going to need to increase your dosage to keep you in the same effect.
And that kind of goes back to our opinion on young guys using steroids. You want to go as far as you can naturally before you even think about using steroids for a couple of reasons. One, so you can get more out of it. 2, so you can do what they're intended to do, which is take your body beyond what is naturally possible.
Yep.
And you already have a base built, so you're going to be able to do much more with it, and you're not going to go backwards beyond where you started. You should always be able to keep that base.
Well, there's people all the time saying, I cut my dosage back, I gained way better.
Yeah.
Well, why? One, you're able to support that amount of compounds you're taking. Now, 2, you're not having as much side effects and you don't feel like shit because you're lethargic from running so much gear that your body can't handle because you don't have the muscle tissue to support it. So, I mean, it's all the time.
It's making your body work harder, your liver, your kidneys, to filter all this stuff out. If you're just taking excess, you're honestly probably just hurting yourself.
And wasting your money.
Yeah, because if you're growing, I mean, you're growing. That's the way I look at it. So whether you're growing off 1,000 milligrams or 750, if you're growing, you're moving in the right direction, and you're only going to be able to do that for so long. All right, so now getting into more realistic bodybuilder type doses. Most bodybuilders are probably going to, now we're talking like more of a hardcore type of bodybuilder here. They're probably going to want to take it 400 to 500 milligrams a week with at least a replacement dose of testosterone, I would say. Now, I think, if I was to run it at a higher dose, I like to keep my tests lower. I just think I get better results that way. They're cleaner gains, less water retention.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm pretty sensitive to estrogen as well. I swell up real quick off of it. Plus, like Trevor was saying, you run a more pure anabolic compound, you see more of the actual lean tissue you gain. we get people in here all the time, oh, I ran some test stack and D-ball, I gained 35 pounds. Well, then they piss out 20 of it because only 15 of it was actual muscle tissue. So, why did I lose everything? No, you didn't lose it all if you did a proper post-cycle. You just lost all that water and glycogen that you were storing. So I like it better myself. I like the anabolic compounds just because you see more what you're working with.
Plus, I think, the old school bodybuilders, a lot of them guys didn't even use testosterone. They weren't even using testosterone. Now, in my opinion, if you don't use testosterone, you are going to have some chance of negative side effects. Low libido, stuff like that. You might get a little depressed, feel a little down. Those are signs of low androgens. But you're going to have a good anabolic effect, and I think that's something that guys overlook nowadays. Everybody's running their tests super high. Tests got to be with everything. I think run a good replacement dose of testosterone, and let the anabolic do the work. That's what they're for. The results will be a lot cleaner, and you'll get better gains in the end. I think more quality is what I'm saying.
Yeah, 400 or 500 milligrams a test. I mean, I could see that. That'd be all right. 800, 900.
And it's just no point if you're going to run something like this because, it's just a lot more anabolic, and I think you're going to have a much cleaner effect. You're going to get better gains, and you're going to feel better too.
Yeah, and we're not saying that somebody couldn't eventually step into those levels of dosages. This is for 70% of us that's training. I mean, somebody stepping on a national level or competing for a pro card.
They might be doing other things.
They might be doing other things. Plus, they got 30, 40 extra pounds of muscle that has extra androgen receptors. They need more just to get to that extra level.
Most people, this should be plenty, and should get you, as far as you'd want to go, honestly. I mean, as long as you're training hard and eating right, that should be enough to get your body to put on some tissue. Now, we did say that it does have a little bit of estrogen aromatization, just very slight, but because it has such a strong binding affinity to the androgen receptor, you may displace some of your testosterone. Could cause some increases in your estradiol conversion as well. So I would run a good, at least a moderate dose, low to moderate dose of an aromatase inhibitor. You don't want to go too high because it'll hurt your cholesterol, but you don't want to run zero and potentially have issues with estradiol. If you don't have problems with it, you got to kind of judge that for yourself. Get some blood work done, see where you're at. If you don't have to use them, don't use them, but at least keep your estradiol in check. Because my personal opinion is that estradiol causes a lot more of the long-term serious issues down the road. Especially with the prostate and so on, the heart. Puts more strain on your kidneys. Can increase your blood pressure. On and on. So, it's something I like to control, but, if your cholesterol is more of an issue, you got to kind of, walk the line with that, whatever you think's best for you. I think it's probably going to pretty much wrap everything up here.
Yeah, I mean, if you was going to run, say, like if cholesterol was an issue and you was going to run, say, 150, 200 milligrams a test with a little bit of 1-testosterone, something like the Virtus might be a decent option.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's non-steroidal.
Iron Legion makes a product called Virtus. It's a non-steroidal aromatase inhibitor that's very effective. It is transdermal or topical, but that's something that we carry on our site at tgbsupplements.com.
Yeah, if you wasn't too sensitive to estrogen, you might be able to get away with running something like that, and it seems to be a lot easier on the cholesterol than something like an exemestane or a Remodex.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, one other thing we didn't talk about before we wrap it up, PCT. This is it's a steroid, so it's definitely going to be suppressive. You're going to want to run a good post-cycle if you're not on hormone replacement therapy. I would definitely look into a good SERM and maybe an AI like Aromacin or Exemestane. I personally like to use natural test boosters. We have a product called Iron Force Nutrition Kingpin, the Black Series. That works really, really well for raising your natural levels if they're suppressed. I'd rather use that than Clomid or Nolvadex myself. I just feel like you get some mood swings and some other side effects like spotty vision when you're running Clomid or Nolvadex.
Yeah, we have one customer. They was trying to get him on the androgel, and he had Kingpin, and he ran Kingpin prior to the androgel. He tried that, hated it. He come back, he said, screw that stuff. He said, I want Kingpin again. Do you got any? I was like, yeah. So, I mean, it does work very well.
Yeah, we've had a few people. I've had blood work done myself, and after a cycle, and I went from 400 up to about 700, which isn't, out of this world. But if you're low, that can make a big difference in maintaining your gains and feeling good. I think that's going to be about everything on the one
touched on it
test.
pretty well.
Yeah, it's about as thorough as we could do. This is a pretty rare steroid. There's not a lot of information out there, so we wanted to kind of cover as much as possible. But we also want to try to get our length of the videos down a little bit. I know we go on and on, so but we're really into this stuff and we enjoy talking about it, and we want to make sure we do a thorough job. So
yeah, if there's something that we didn't touch on that you might be curious about, just shoot us a comment below. We'll definitely get back in touch with you.
yeah, give us a like. We would appreciate that. You guys that are supporting us, liking our videos and commenting, we really appreciate it. We always respond to our comments. You can email us at info@tgbsupplements.com, or you can call us 550-4241. That's the store number. You can call us anytime. You'll probably speak with Ben or myself or one of the girls here, so anything you need, give us a call. That pretty much covers it for this video. We got some more videos coming. Sorry for the delay. We did take a little bit of time off. We've been working on the podcast, the Anabolic Cartel podcast, trying to wrap things up, get it up, so you guys can watch it. It is up now.
Yeah, on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud.
Yeah, so look out for the Anabolic Cartel. If you guys are into this type of stuff, you'll definitely like the podcast. So we've been working on that, but now that that's up and going now, you'll see more videos from us. I'd say on at least a weekly basis. So stay tuned for the next one, and we'll talk to you then.